we're aiming to record this so that we can put at least parts of it on the website to inform people who want further information. So we've got above you on my screen, at least, Mr. Holbrook, you've got Zoe Gordon, the head teacher, and then we've got 3 people representing DCAT. We've got Mark Talbot, the CEO, Darren Carpenter is Chief Operating Officer, and Baruch Bahani is the school improvement guru. We've also got Adrian Smith, who's a consultant, who's working with DCAT and us on working our way towards making a decision around academisation. Okay, so what we're going to do is Zoe is going to say a little bit from the school's perspective, and then our DCAT colleagues will say a little bit from their perspective. We've had your questions, so they're going to be woven in, but we'll have a chance to come back to those as well, because they were pertinent to the sort of things we want to talk about. So over to you, Zoe.
Okay, so yeah, I was just going to sort of say a little bit about the school's perspective and why we're sort of pursuing this route at this moment in time. So obviously we're a very small infant school, and as such, under the West Sussex School Effectiveness Strategy, are under threat really and have had to look at different options for the future. And since I started as head teacher 3 years ago, there were a number of challenges for the school, which were looking at a low roll, very low performance data, issues with leadership, and other staffing issues. And those are all things that we've had to deal with. We've secured significant improvement in that time, but alongside that, I've been looking for ways to ensure that the school can secure its position in the community, because that's really important for us, and obviously with that maintaining the ethos and the core values as well. I think alongside that, the staff and parents are very aware of the transition point between infants and juniors, and that's been increasingly important to prioritise, especially for some children who've experienced significant change, and obviously the current circumstances sort of highlight that even more really. And this year we're really ensuring that transition, more than we've ever done, extends into September, with things like we're inviting the year 3s when they're in year 3 to come back and do forest school in September. So we're already strengthening those routes, but being part of the same organisation as Central will help us to develop that further. So then we started to discussions with DCAT and began to see the benefits for our school of joining the Academy Trust, from strengthening the relationship and the partnership, but also with the other locals, with Central, but also with the other local schools in the trust and further afield as well. I think the sharing of resources and expertise throughout the trust is a real attraction for us as well. Opportunities for support and for staff development that aren't always easy to find within a small school. And the trust also are very school improvement focused, and are also very challenging, but will allow the schools within the trust to have autonomy from what we've spoken about, and the ability to develop our own distinct character, which we feel we have, that we're very keen to continue. So from that, the governors then have consulted and seen that this is a potential way forward to secure the future of the school. So that's really where we stand at the moment. So shall I leave over to Mark to carry on?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Zoe. And nice to meet you, Oliver, by the way. Thanks for coming on today. And
it's
thank
strange
you.
to be the only person, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah,
indeed. And it's lovely. And hopefully, because this is being recorded, I'll extend a welcome from DCAT to all other parents and carers that pick this up online or on the recorded version. I'm Mark Talbot, the CEO. I'm blessed to oversee 9 schools across East and West Sussex, and one just across the border in Hampshire. And Zoe's going to kindly, in a minute, put up some slides if we can, if the technology works, and I can show you a map of where we are. But by kind of way of introduction, DCAT is a trust that has started in 2014. We now have nine schools, as I say, and it's fair to say we're now a much stronger trust than we were a few years ago. And I think that's relevant in terms of the central story that we'll talk about today. And, you know, we really believe that if we can make a difference for children and do good for children in the community, in the local area, and partner with schools, and it makes a lot of sense, as Zoe said, for Central as the junior and Lancastrian as the infant, to, you know, work really closely together, that seamless transition between the two schools. We're really after that. We're after working with our heads and making sure that it is really good for the children. An infant school, we have infant schools within our trust, and we'll talk about some of the successes a bit later on in our brief presentation today. So Zoe, I don't know if it's possible to try and get some slides up. You did very well. Oliver, just so you know that we have we've already had a meeting like this with the staff at Lancastrian, just so that they get to know us. Normally we'd obviously pop into the school and meet people, and that's our preferred way of operating. And clearly the COVID-19's provided a significant challenge for everyone. I hope you're safe and well over there, and your work or whatever it is not too affected. So whilst we're pulling that slide up, I'll just talk about our 9 schools. I don't know how much you know, Oliver, about DCAT, whether you've done your own kind of research as a parent, looked at a map or tried to find our website.
Only very superficial. I've looked at the website, looked a little bit at GFE league tables and things, but no means an expert. Okay.
So in terms of our schools, we have what we call 2 hubs. One very successful hub, or both successful hubs, but the one over in Hastings. I don't know if you know much about Hastings. It's considered by the government as what's called an opportunity area, where there's quite a lot of deprivation. Historically, standards have been quite low. And that trust in that hub, our schools in that area are really doing well. And if we can get the slides up later, I'll kind of outline that. And in terms of, so we've got 4 schools over there. We've got a junior school. 2 of the schools over in Hastings area have infant provision, and one of our schools there has 60% pupil premium disadvantage, which is a bit of a challenge, but they just got retain their outstanding for their infant and nursery provision, which is, you know, really great for them, and you know, as part of our trust is really encouraging. So that's great. Over this side, you'll probably know Central, and as we said to the staff, Central hasn't been all good, and we appreciate that to have been in special measures. When the trust took on Central, it was in special measures. It then got inspected again shortly after, and it was also special measures. And under my leadership and the new executive team under Brooke, who I'm sure will speak to you later, and Darren Carpenter, we worked really hard. Oh, brilliant. We worked really hard to transform Central and really work with the community. And, you know, we can talk about that when we come to some of the impacts as well. And then we've got the March joined us. Delighted the March joining us in, I think it was December 2018. And they joined the hub. And I know Zoe's worked really closely with the head teacher at Central, Lisa, and also the head teacher, Nikki, at the March. And the way we operate is getting our heads working together. We don't have all the answers, but in our schools, there's really good practice and there's areas that can be improved. And by bringing us together and us being able to facilitate that, that really makes a difference. And I met Zoe recently at one of the sessions at the March, which was around safeguarding, which was their annual training, and the schools came together with Central as well. And that was really positive. So you can see on the map, I don't know if you can see that, Oliver, on the map, there's the schools, and you can see that. And we've got a recently joined school called St Columba over in Fareham. So if we move through, thank you, Zoe. Thanks, whoever helped you out with the IT, very much appreciated in the background there. And so what are we, you know, if I'm a parent, what I want to know is, okay, my children go to Lancastrian or are going to go, what's this trust, and you know, who are they and what are they about? So you've met us virtually. When I became CEO a few years ago, I was really keen that the trust focused on the children, and that we had a vision that was really simple, and it was about every child achieving their God-given potential. And whether, you know, for us that translates to doing well in their work, but also not just achieving their kind of attainment, which would be you know, their end result, but actually where they've come from, if they made really good progress, and that's important to us. But God-given potential is much more than that. It's about are they achieving it in music, creatively, all of the wider aspects of education that, you know, I know Zoe feels is really important, and we do as a trust. And we've got 4 stated aims that you'd have read, Oliver, on our website. Firstly is around that achieving the potential. Second is about investing in our staff. And I think one of the beauties of being a trust is that we get the 9 schools expertise, and we got all those staff, you know, 300 plus staff, 500 if you count everyone, 3,500 children across all of our schools, 50 governors, and we can have all of that expertise and we can share it and make sure it works, but always coming back to what's it distinct at Lancastrian, what, you know, what's important for Lancastrian, what's important for the parents and the carers in that community. The third aim is unashamedly, we want all of our schools to perform above national, because it's your children that come through our schools. It's your children that need their next passport to, whether it be Central or the next junior or up to secondary, and that's crucially important. As I've been a head teacher myself, and 3 children, I know that, you know, they need to achieve well, and that's not just attainment, that's progress as well. And the third thing as a church trust, it's about the Christian identity, and that's about strong values. Are children loving? Are they caring? Do they care about their environment? Do they care about each other? Can we learn from the Bible in terms of any teaching? Can we learn from the worships or the assemblies that we do? And that's a strong part of our trust. And we're aware Lancastrian isn't currently a church school, and joining our trust, that's absolutely fine. And what we've talked to the staff is, you know, what that would look like joining a church trust. And what we've come to, I think, with the governors as well, is that Lancastrian do an enormous amount of work that already fits in with that ethos and those values. And if you think about Lancastrian's own vision and values, they are very in keeping with ours, and that's important. And this is a consultation, and that's important too. And the governors need to make a decision about the fit for DCAT. We need to make that, and also the school. So do you mind pressing the next slide? Thank you so much. I'm going to skip through this because that looks awful on the screen, but what you might not know, Oliver, is what is an educational trust. I expect you do, but for those that maybe don't, the kind of educational agenda was trying to put leaders at the heart of improvement, and with the local authorities diminishing in their size, and with the trust agenda coming, school leaders were at the heart of trying to improve each other and help each other. And I really support that and think it's great in terms of, you know, I love the idea of Zoe being able to help someone in our trust and other people in the trust being able to help Zoe, and that's good. The other part is about a bit more freedom. So we get freedoms to decide a little bit more around our curriculum, a bit more autonomous in our decision making as a group of heads. So on Monday next week, we're all meeting as heads, and we'll be talking about what we're going to do over the summer, in terms of, COVID-19, but also getting a break. And I think the decision making, whether it's educational or non, is really at the heart of what we do. And as a CEO, I really work with our heads to make sure that they are at the heart of the decision making. And obviously, as a trust, what works well shared with other schools, and helping each other. I've talked about that. And the final thing is the ability to come together. And I think Zoe said at the beginning of her part, which is that small schools, there is a vulnerability there, and as a big trust, we can share some of the load and make sure there's that financial stability for our smaller schools, and also provide some economies of scale or enable the back office function, all of the administration, the legal, the finance, and all of those things, as little as much or as little as the school needs, we can provide that. So you're okay to press again. So in terms of the trust, there's a few more slides, and the next ones are around how's the trust doing. So, if I was sitting there in your shoes, Oliver, I'd go, that's all great. Okay, I like that. But actually, what's the credibility? Is the trust doing okay? Are we going, if we're going to join as a school, are we going to be in safe hands? And I'm just going to hand over to Brooke, who's our head of improvement. He will just unpack our kind of trust performance, both at Key Stage 1, but also as the children progress into Key Stage 2. Over to you, Brooke.
Thanks very much, Mark. And hello, Oliver, and hello, the rest of you, and the parents that are watching this on the recorded version. Good evening to you. What you can see there, Oliver, are three tables, and each table goes from as children work their way through Key Stage 1. So you've got EYFS data, Year 1 data, and Year 2 data. And that shows their key capture points about how children are doing in specific areas. So in EYFS, we talk about a GLD, and GLD means a good level of development, and that captures a whole host of things. And if you look at all of our schools, bar the brand new one that joined just before Christmas, typically DCAT schools, the children in EYFS, that's infants, first year of infants, 70% meet the GLD standards, the good level of development. And you could ask, hang on a sec, why isn't it at least as good as the national average and more? There's a bit of variability within that, and what you've got to consider and bear in mind is that the children that we serve in certain schools, or predominantly, it's those that are in challenging situations, and actually that is a really good outcome in terms of the context that we operate in and the communities we serve. The second table, table B there, is for Year 1, and that's phonics, and that's ability to decipher words using phonetical sounds. And what you can see there is actually, again, DCAT schools by the children in DCAT schools, by the time they get into Year 1, are doing pretty well. They're broadly in line with the national average. 82% of children will get what's expected. Now, if you go across to table C there, that's Year 2. That's the year they leave infant school and then go into secondary school. And that says, look, are they well prepared? Are they well prepared for the next big chunk of learning, for the next phase of education? And by the time, the children may come to us behind where they are meant to be, but by the time they leave infant school, they are doing pretty well. And that RWM, Oliver, you're probably wondering, or you may not be, but if you are, what does RWM mean? It's what proportion of children have got all of reading, writing, and maths combined. And that's saying, look, 66% of our children, once they leave Year 2, they've got all of those at the expected standard. And the national there is 65 as a comparator. Again, that's pretty good. Individually in reading, writing, and maths, they're broadly in line, give also a percentage with the national average. So that tells you sort of at the first step where our children are. for the next phase, which is where we have sent. Oh, I'm going to just slide across because I've got. There we go. Yeah, if we go to the next table. Now that looks quite a full-on page, but what that shows you is you've got Central, St Leonard's, All Saints, Christchurch, St Paul's, and the Marsh. They are all those primary schools that we have, and I'm not sure if Mark said that we have. I thought you said, Mark, we have 2 over in Hastings, but actually we've got 3 primary phase children with infant schools over in Hastings. And what you can see is that red line. That red line is what the national average is. What is the national average for what? That is children that leave year 6 at the expected standard. And typically you'd have something like 65% of children. And what you can see with each of the schools, what we're able to demonstrate is a real additional value. So you can see that Central, when it came to us, was in a very, very difficult way. Historically, the hemorrhage numbers from about 400 plus children down to 146 children or so. Outcomes were really, really weak. The quality of teaching and learning was really, really weak, but we're able to sort of raise standards. But in each of our schools, you can see that St Leonard's, All Saints, Christchurch, St Paul's, and even at the March, sort of once we get to school, we work pretty closely with the head teachers to ensure that actually all the things are in place that need to be in place so that children can achieve their God-given potential. And that means they flourish. That's not just, they are happy in school, but they are happy in school and achieving academically. So that's our schools. All of this data is publicly available. We've just presented it in a format which is in one place for our schools, and you just go to the DFE and it's all there. Can we go to the next slide there, please? Right. What the Department for Education does is combines all of those outcomes for us, and it says, okay, where are we? And they compare us to other trusts. So they don't talk about attainment; they talk about progress. And progress is very, Oliver, if I talk about attainment and progress, do you know the distinction? And forgive me, it's quite a technical distinction.
Yes, attainment's what they got. Progress is the difference over time.
Fantastic. Okay, that is it. So the progress is how much value in terms of learning they've made. So, there is one level above that, green. There is significantly above average. That's above average. There is sort of in line with average. There is below average, and there's red, which is very significantly below average. So that includes all the schools that have been with us for 3 or more years. And so across reading, writing, and maths, because they're the 3 subjects that are benchmarked, if you like, we're doing pretty well. For disadvantaged children, when we say that it's every child to reach their God-given potential, we don't say, oh, every child provided its privilege, or every child provided there's some support for them at home. No, it's irrespective. So typically disadvantaged children, and that could be children that have free school meals, they don't do so well nationally. And you can see there, nationally in England, it's only 31% get there. Whereas within the trust it's 42.6%. And we're still working on improving that and raising that. SEND, children with special education needs, again, it's pretty low, and that's by nature some of the challenges that children with special needs face. It's about 18%. We do slightly better, but it's something that we're also working on. I'm going to stop there and say, look, this is some of the hard-nosed data that sits behind our performance. We are more than just that data. And we would welcome we welcome parents going into our schools, and we welcome teachers and head teachers talking to existing head teachers within our trust to get a real understanding of what we do and how we go about doing what we do. There's one other thing that I'm not sure if I heard you right, Mark. Our school, Christchurch, which is a massively shows an area which is massively challenged. It had a recent inspection, and it's outstanding. Its outstanding wasn't the whole of the infant section; it was for EYFS. So when children join, and the nursery. So when children join, the quality of input that they get is outstanding. So we do have both expertise throughout all the phases. I think I've waffled on enough. Oliver, do you have any questions for me at this point, and then I can address those?
Well, not particularly about the figures. You know, it looks really impressive. I suppose what I'm interested in is to know about some, you know, how you're working towards achieving those figures and that progress. You know, and you know, you've also talked a lot there about meeting the expected standard, and I'd be quite interested also to know about what your sort of vision is towards, you know, exceeding the expected standard, and you know, is there a model of kind of school improvement which is sort of very consistent across all your schools, or are those schools achieving those figures in quite different ways? But I don't know, some of these questions might sort of link into maybe after other sections of the presentation. I don't know how it's all working.
Mark, is it okay if I address that?
Yeah, please do. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, our school improvement works. It's quite different to the way sort of the local authority works. So Zoe said, look, we looked at the local authority and what offer they could give in terms of support, and actually we're looking for something different. Local authorities, including West Sussex, the impression that I've got from other heads is that that level of support has diminished somewhat. But typically, it's sort of one visit a term, either 3 times a year or 6 times a year. We're in there pretty much weekly. Be for a whole day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week. And what that does, it accelerates what the head teachers are able to do and the time that they have available. Because as a head teacher, you have to do so very, very, very much. It's the curriculum, it's assessment, it's being on duty in the playground, it's recruitment, it's looking at the budget, it is dealing with some behaviour issues, it is about, actually, hang on, I've got to now go into assembly, and I've got to prepare for assembly. It's about the reward system. There's a tremendous amount there. And when a school is on a journey to being outstanding, you get to you know, the further you are below that, the more work there is to do. And that's where help and support is useful. To get to outstanding, what you need is to be able to demonstrate, or Zoe would need to be able to demonstrate, I go out, and not only is my practice and my leadership and everything that goes on here great, in order to be outstanding, I can demonstrate that I can go and help other schools. So several of our schools are now in a position to go out and be helping partner schools. So it doesn't just come from me, it comes from others. So the model goes, we're in there, the school that needs the support, be it critical response, urgent, will get that critical response. If it's a bit above that, it'll get a bit less support, but it'll be based on need. If actually what they need is to have the opportunity to develop their broader across school, through other schools leadership, then that is also given. You mentioned there, let me answer the thing about, in terms of the curriculum, we do not straitjacket the head teachers. So when I go into Zoe's school, I have to see and be able to recognise that because Zoe is here, it's shaped in her image. Equally, if Zoe's at a different school and somebody else is at Lancastrian, I would expect that head teacher to shape it in their image, and they are free to do so because it's not top down. It's got to be driven internally by that head teacher, and not externally from the likes of me or Mark or another head teacher elsewhere. So the curriculum is entirely up to her. In terms of, there are some hard and fast bits that we insist on, and they're called the red lines. And they're sit on a single page of A4 paper, and you've got different columns in there. And one of those things is safeguarding. In terms of safeguarding, you need to have this, this, and this, and this in place. Fine. If you can live with that, great. Then you can be part of us and be happy doing so. Another one might be, this is assessment. This is how we do it. And that means that as a head teacher, when you do assessments for year 2, you can compare your assessments and how your children are progressing in comparison to all the year 2s right across the trust, because you'll be doing the same things and it's standardized. So there, and if you can live with that, everybody is happy and it's clear. But outside of that, it's pretty much do whatever you think is right for your school and your community and your staff and your children. The other question you raised is the question of the greater depth or the higher standards. Our higher standards is now in line with the national average. It's taken us 3 years to get there, and we are happy with that. We are particularly happy with that because to get a real depth of children, getting to those higher standards, you've got to get the foundation stuff right first. So we started off at 2%, it went up, it doubled to 4%, 6%, and now we're at 10.5, 11%. And the national average is sort of bang on there. So we are very, very pleased with that, because what we're saying is actually, well, it doesn't matter which community you're serving. It doesn't. Can you match that? And that also helps us with the currency of greater depth. Sorry, with the currency of the value that we are adding. So if I come into a school and I'm expected to get the expected standards, but I get the greater depth, it looks really, really, really good on the quality of teaching and learning in the school if I'm actually getting the highest standard, because I am absolutely flourishing there. You can't really do that unless you're happy in the school. And you can't sustain that unless the staff are happy in the school, unless the children are happy in the school. And then if you were to ask me, well, how do you know apart from those outcomes? Well, if you look at three indicators, attendance across our schools, attendance of pupils is increasing. 2, absence rates in our schools is low, and teachers leaving is actually low. You may have heard of some challenges that we've had at Central, but that's a school that's had some particular challenges. But right across our trust, you say, well, how many staff are leaving? One member of staff. Are they getting promotion? There's no big turnover of staff. It's very, very stable. And those staff that are there are pretty much always there. So I think I've probably answered a number of your questions there, but come back to me either now or a bit later if you need to.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks for your question, Oliver. I'll keep going and then questions at the end. Brilliant. So I think Brug alluded to this, which is what difference do we make, not just outcomes, but actually parent view, which is historically hovers around 80%. We're delighted that the question that is key for us is your child happy at school? And as parents, as carers, that's the question you want to know. Great results, but actually are children happy? And across our schools, when this was done, 92% of our parents and carers strongly agree that their child is happy at school. So that's good, and we don't take that for granted. We work really hard, and that's testament to the great work of our amazing head teachers across our 9 schools currently. Thank you, Zoe. A slide perhaps to read afterwards, but it's also one of the validations or the inspectorate that we have in each of our schools is Ofsted. And what we've just done is taken out any comments and put them here around what was said around the trust. And they triangulate this. They ask parents, carers, they see it in the school, they ask leaders. And you can read these, which is basically the trust is adding value to the schools and is making a difference and helping accelerate, helping improve. And if we could press a click, Zoe, that would be brilliant. And that's whether that's our secondary or whether that's our junior school, or St Paul's there on the right-hand side, who's got 650 children as a big primary. We work really well with the governing bodies in our schools. Some trusts don't have governing bodies as we know them, but we believe in them. We believe in a really close partnership with parents and carers, working with our community, and governors, local governing bodies play a really important part in our trust, and that will continue. And if Lancastrian and Central come together, we'll be looking to create a really exciting governing body over the 2 schools to ensure that excellent, seamless transition and quality of education. Thank you, Zoe. So in terms of kind of who we are on the call today, we've got me, Brooke, who you've met, Darren, who I'll turn to in a minute. Our trust head teachers are an massive important part of what we do. We've got an assessment leads for English and maths. We've got a head of finance. We've got a head of governance. We've got a compliance manager. We've got an administrator, and we've got other finance. Now, that may look big or small. It depends how you look at it, and depends what work you do. But we are a relatively small trust. We are growing, which is really exciting. But what we do, and we're really pleased to be able to do this, is provide high quality support for our schools and do a lot of the things, as I think Brooke alluded to earlier, to allow your head teacher to be freed up to focus on the children, to be on the playground. I think that's really, really important. So, yeah, we've got a couple of assessment leads. I think I might have said maths, but we've got English and assessment currently. Thank you, Zoe. So you might be asking, as parents and carers, why join the trust? Why would Lancastrian do that? We've talked about the outcomes, and we've talked about being a trust that is doing well. We're the second out of 31 trusts in the country, Church of England trusts, in terms of performance, and we're 18 out of 298 of all trusts, and hasn't always been like that for us. And so we've been improving, and that's the culture we like with all of our schools, is nothing's ever perfect, and let's keep improving. I think your head teacher Zoe mentioned this at the beginning, the benefit of being part of a wider team, not just central, which I know is very close to you, but actually there's nine other schools, 10, 11, however many it is. The head teachers come together and they share their worries, share their successes, and that's a really good part of what we do. As a small school, joining the trust would protect your financial position, which we've talked about. That seamless provision I've talked about. And the one thing I haven't talked about, and perhaps I'll go over to Darren, so you get to know Darren, who's our head of leads up our finance and operations. Darren, do you just want to mention the sort of capital grants that we can access?
Yes, absolutely. So in addition to the capital money that the school would currently receive anyway through the local authority, and that's the devolved formula capital grant, in addition to that, as part of an academy trust which meets certain criteria in terms of size of the trust, number of academies and number of children, and we do meet that criteria, the trust receives a significant amount of money per year. This year is in the order of £500,000, and that we then use, we allocate over our schools, in addition to the capital money that the school would receive currently as a local authority maintained school. So that is in addition to, rather than instead of. And what we are able to do, and we allocate that money in a way which is based on need. So we'll be looking at things like safeguarding need, health and safety need, but also there's a wide variety of projects that we are able to fund across our schools. And actually having a share of that amount of money on a fairly regular basis, on an annual basis, does enable schools, in addition to the current funding, to be able to maintain school buildings and keep the buildings and the sites safe for the children that are in the school, as well as providing some additional sort of resources to the school. So once we've gone through a programme of making sure the school site is safe, and I'm sure it currently is, then there will be additional funds available to fund a number of projects, and usually they are directed by the governing body and the head teacher in consultation with the trust.
Thank you, Darren. Zoe, do you mind pressing again? Okay, so that kind of brings us to the end before we go to questions. One of the things that you've already done, Oliver, is do your own, what we call due diligence, find out about us, have a look on our website, speak to people. I'm sure parents and carers do that and know the community. Then there's a chance to fill out the questionnaire, which is do you agree with this proposal? Yes, no, not sure, add comments. And I think that's crucial. And we always encourage people to do that, because we want the governing body, a Lancastrian, to make a really informed decision, and that's part of a real meaningful consultation. And so that just takes us to questions. So I will hand back to David, and perhaps we could go through any questions perhaps that you have, Oliver.
A bit strange to do this as one person on how many people are else on the call. I suppose my first question is what is the kind of time scale that is sort of being looked at here? So if if the things were to progress, what kind of how quickly would things change, or would we see that happen?
We're going through the formal consultation process now, which will finish as we break up, basically. And we've said right from the beginning we want to go into it in an open way. We're genuinely consulting. So if we get back a feeling from the community this isn't for us, then the governors will have to sit down and think very hard about what to do next. And DCAT are aware of that. So that phase will come to fruition. I think it's the 22nd of July the governing body will meet. If we decide that things are fine and we can move forward, or then we don't want to hang around, to be honest. We had hoped to be possibly, if things went ahead, to be starting the new school year, but we won't be doing that. So it will be, if we do go ahead, it will be, conversion will be sometime in the autumn term, possibly beginning in November, possibly beginning of December. So it's, and that isn't ideal mid-year, but what we do know is that DCAT are not going to march through the door and tell us to do things differently. They will be working with us, finding out more about us over the next few months, and vice versa. But then we'll set an agenda jointly about what the priorities are. Well, I think that's what we're going to do. That's my assumption of what we're going to do. So it is quick. It could be quite quick, but it is. We're not going to rush if we consider that's too much of a problem. Does that fit, Mark? I think with your perception.
Yeah, absolutely. I think. I mean, obviously, COVID-19 has an impact, but I absolutely agree. You said it well.
Yeah.
David.
Okay.
I suppose one of my big question is, if any kind of, there could be a bit more detail given about how you might imagine the schools looking post amalgamation. And as a parent, from Lancastrian, from quite to think about it from quite a sort of selfish Lancastrian perspective, I'd like to really see what you see are the benefits for my daughter starting in reception would be for that. What is the case that would make her education better, really?
So, do you want to make a comment about that to start with?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the other thing I was just going to say, sort of links with your last question as well, is that for a lot of people in the school community, initially it won't be a big difference, and that we've talked about that being very important for us. There will be some members of staff for whom it does make a difference, but because their jobs will be slightly different. But actually for the school community it shouldn't be a big change. So although it might not be ideal making that change in November time, then it shouldn't be a big change. In terms of those benefits, I mean, I go back to what I talked about before, which I think for us focusing on the transition, and I know obviously initially that isn't a focus, but it comes around very quickly, and I think making that as smooth as possible for the children so that they have experience of the school that they're going to move on to. And I think that's something that we can look to do by building those links from earlier on, so from when they first start, and then also for us looking at the curriculum, the continuity of curriculum as well between the two schools, I think is really key. That's one of our areas of development anyway. So really looking at how we can work together and use our joint resources, because as we've said, being a small school, we're limited to a certain extent in terms of our resources and expertise. So being able to share those expertise, not just of Central but of DCAT as a wider trust as well, I think is a huge benefit for us.
It's been interesting having conversations with DCAT personnel and also a little bit with Central, because one of the things that Zoe's done since she's been head is really made very concrete what the views of Lancastrian are, what the school is trying to achieve with the youngsters across all of their experience. And I guess you've had as much of a look at the school as you can, given COVID-19, but it is a delightful learning environment when you go into it. And we wouldn't be talking to DCAT if we thought that was in danger in any way. The governors want to support the school leadership to enhance that and to move forward. And when we've been, for instance, we've been and visited the March and had a look at the way they do things there, they're different to our school, but they've got strengths that we think we can learn from. And actually, I suppose my grandson's in year 5 at Central, and I've got a real sense of optimism about Central now. I think it is a school really on the up. So we're not fazed by that. But at the heart of this move is we've got something special here. This Lancastrian is a special school, and we want to be able to take that forward. And this move could be one way of making that happen more. Sorry, I went on a bit there, but
yeah,
but it's important. I don't know whether anybody else got anything to add to what I was asking you, Mark.
Yeah. Just to add one point, as from a sort of parent point of view, I think Brute touched on it earlier, which is about that the staff that stay and happy children. And I think as a parent, I'm always, I want to know that staff are happy in the school and are going to be there and are kind of invested in the long run. And that's a real feature of our schools, that staff stay, the head teachers are in charge, and that there's a happiness amongst the children. And that is really important. I know it's kind of soft to measure the kind of the outcomes, but I think it's equally important. And so that's a real feature. So if you said to me, what's going to be a feature of this joint initiative, I'd say that we're going to have really strong staff, the best of both schools and the best of our community and our trust schools, and we're going to have staff that feel motivated and wanted to stay and develop their own practice in order that we can do the very best for the children. So I think it's really exciting, that transition point, that we can make it as seamless as possible.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So just to sort of understand, so at the moment we're talking about Lancastrian potentially becoming part of DCAT, and then in the future there being an amalgamation with Central, or are we talking about both things at the same time?
The way we're describing it at the moment is we're consulting on Lancastrian becoming an academy within DCAT. That's the decision we're making now. What we have discussed as a governing body, and we've discussed with DCAT, is what the next steps might be if we are going to maximise the benefits of working more closely with Central and being part of DCAT. So we've talked about, and this is a little bit to do with the history of the other half of the schools on the site. We've talked a little bit about whether a change of name might be beneficial for both schools. We've talked about Church of England status, and whether we would need to consult on that. And we've talked about what a journey forward from there might look like. There's no, at the moment, the two schools, next term will have separate leadership. They will be operating separately, and so on. But the governors of Lancastrian want to set something up where it allowed the school to move forward and make maximum benefit. So the answer is sort of twofold, really. We're consulting on academisation, and then there are other things that we might do in the future, and we would talk to people in the community about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I put something in there, Mark? Is it worth having a clarity around the question of amalgamation?
Yes, happy to. You may have read in the paper. I think we made a response to the papers, which was for us. The benefit is keeping the two schools as two schools. There may be a shared name, but the idea that the sites will be retained. The two schools will be the infant and the junior. Might be a shared name, so ex-junior, ex-infant. But that's as David said, is part of the consultation and part of the conversation. So I think the kind of reassurance is that the infant will stay as the infant and the junior will stay as the junior. That's the plan. As
separate legal entities?
Yes, indeed, yeah. With the same budget, with their own budgets, with their, and I think their own distinct nature. And I think for us, that's exciting. And I think when we've met with David and Zoe and had the opportunity to see the school, I echo what David says. It's got a wonderful learning environment, lovely, happy children, great staff, a very strong governing body, and I think Lancastrian will bring value to TCAT as well as what we can bring to TCAT as well.
Okay.
Back to you, Oliver, if you've got any other questions. No pressure.
No, I think that's good. Thank you. It feels a bit strange to be in this sort of forum, but thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was helpful actually having your questions to frame some of what we needed to talk to. Okay, so have we covered all the agenda we need to do once if we're going to publish some of this? I'm looking at Mark in particular there.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is that the consultation is open. Parents and carers, please do contribute, do take part. We really would want the governors to have a fully formed view. That's you can do that. I think that's really, really helpful. And then what we can do is, if there are questions that arise from that, as we have done a bit tonight, and also we're preparing the frequently asked questions, and we can answer those questions for you through Zoe, through David, because we would want you as parents and carers to be fully informed, because it's your children's education at the heart of this.
Thank you for that, Mark. Okay. Anybody got anything else that you want to add? I think we'll close the meeting there. Thank you, everybody, for your contribution. It's been really good. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Oliver.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.